Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Lance McHan Show. My guest today is Rakmey Castleman. She has a Ph.D. in public health, and today we're going to be going over mental health and trying to get rid of some of the stigmas around mental health and try to share what we can do to help our friends and family and loved ones transition through some of the hard times but we all kind of share that pain and agony with them because we all go through it together. So thank you and welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Lance. Thank you for having me this morning. And I'm grateful that you provide this atmosphere to discuss mental health because it's one of those things that happens to many of us, especially our loved ones, but we don't talk about it.
But we're all affected. Just because one person in the family nucleus, it happens to them, we're all affected, in some form or fashion.
Absolutely.
So let's talk a little bit about where you work and what your work does for the community. It's I'll let you tell us.
Yes, certainly. So I'm a program administrator for a crisis residential services, which is a home. It's a home-like setting. We want to make sure that recovery setting provides that atmosphere, a healing atmosphere. We know that, when someone is in a crisis situation, it's tough. It's hard. They are at the most vulnerable part of their lives. And so we want to create a space with not only just the recovery setting, but also staff members who cares.
So when you say crisis, are you talking about drugs, alcohol, addiction crisis, or like a mental health breakdown where they feel suicidal?
We're talking about all of the above.
Okay.
So individuals might be coming in who might be suicidal, or a person who might not been taking medications as prescribed, and so now they're very symptomatic, and some might be symptomatic mentally, but also have had substance use in their system. So we're here to help stabilize them.
Do you find that a lot of people who take medications to help with their mental health, that they don't want to take that drug, but they'll take methamphetamines and drink alcohol and smoke pot? Do you see that happen? Like, well, I don't want to take that, but I'll take this. Do you see that in the?
You know what? I'm glad you're asking that question, because the other program that I oversee is called Prevention and Early Intervention of Psychosis, which we work with youth 15 to 25 years of age who are experiencing early onset of psychosis. Many times in this line of work, especially in the early stages of experiencing the symptoms, people would self-medicate because they rather say, something is going on with me. I'm going to try to smoke weed or drink some alcohol to get rid of these symptoms. And if these things are not being detected at an early age, now we have what we call co-occurring disorder, the substance use and the mental health.
Oh, okay. And sometimes it's hard to diagnose because I would imagine if they're taking the other substances, the recreational drugs, that it kind of masks some of the other underlying issues.
Right. And it's temporarily what masks, but ultimately in the long run, if mental health symptoms have not been appropriately diagnosed and treated, that can turn into something more challenging. And unfortunately, mental health is still a stigma. And that's why we're talking about this now. I can share with you, just from interviewing some of the clients, they would rather say I'm an alcoholic or I'm a meth user than to say I am a person with schizophrenia, or I have bipolar, or I have depression and anxiety.
I could see why that would be a little easier to say, because that's kind of a social norm where if you're like, I'm schizophrenic, people automatically think you're crazy and you hear voices all the time.
Right.
So where do we start as a society, or even let's make it even smaller, our community? Where do we start? How do we?
Well, that's another great question. I think we can start by having these types of conversation, normalizing that conversation. And I think parents and teachers needs to be informed and be educated on how to identify behavioral issues that in schools might look like kids just having behavior, but what is it behind that behavior? You know? And learning to identify these things, having a space and a place where people can come to and talk about their challenges and their struggles without having feeling like they are being judged. You know, I think people are afraid to get help because they're afraid, what are people going to say about me?
Yeah,
you know?
I think that's our society. Like, we're so judgmental nowadays. It's like you can't even have a difference of an opinion, and somebody's like calling you names or you don't understand. You know, so I was having a conversation with a lady, and if you can have that, it was about a gentleman who was he was a black gentleman who was best friends with a KKK guy, and so they started from mutual respect, and they built this 20-year-long friendship just by having that mutual respect. I don't agree with you, you don't agree with me, but we're gonna sit down and we're just gonna talk. You know, no hard feelings, and we may be mad at each other, but we're gonna shake hands at the end of the day and be friends. And so if we could have that, kind of like what we're doing here, just a level of respect, even though we might disagree, just come together and figure out a solution together.
Absolutely. And I agree with you. You know, I think, for me, I believe that the more or the differences in opinion that we have, the better it is for us to find creative solutions.
Absolutely.
You know, if 10 people have the same ideas,
we're not
going to be creative in finding solutions. So I absolutely agree. I think differences in opinion, being able to listen to each other without judgment.
Yeah.
And then let's see what we can put on the table together, you know?
Yeah, let's do that little brainstorm, the mind mapping thing. And like, okay, this sounds like a good idea. Let's explore that.
Right.
You know, we have a huge homeless population here in Stockton. And what role do you think mental health has in the homeless population as far as, I don't know, it just seems like it's exploded overnight, which isn't true. They're just more prevalent. They've always been there. We just see it more.
Right. And you're right about that. Well, you know, Stockton has such a rich history, especially in the area of mental health.
Yeah, we used to have the place on California Street.
Yes. Absolutely.
That's what it was called.
It's a mental health institute right off of Magnolia.
Okay.
And that was actually one of the biggest hospital west of the Mississippi, mental health hospitals. Yes, west of Mississippi.
There was a whole 20 acres, I think it was.
Yes, absolutely. And so, you know, during the Reagan era, we had the mental health deinstitutionalization, where there was, you know, an act that was signed to say, you know, these individuals who are currently being institutionalized in a mental health facility, let's, instead of, you know, institutionalizing them, put them out in the community and have them live in the community and integrate back into the community. The thought of it was great, but the transition,
the unintended consequences.
Right. And so we have a lot of generations, you know, from one generation to the next generation who wasn't, and at the time, you know, in any transitional period, there's going to be challenges and, their struggles. And so what I see mostly, because we reach out to our homeless population, and the men and women who are homeless, if you track them back, many of them have family members from the institutions.
Oh, wow.
So we have, you know, the double whammy of lower socioeconomics, lack of support. We have mental health issues. We have...
what do you think that solution would be? Should we build another institution for them?
You know, I believe that human beings should have the quality of life and to live among each other, because we're social beings.
We are.
Yes.
But when that person is socializing with their whole house on the sidewalk, you know, it's hard for, I don't know. I saw a guy the other day, and I always go to this one taco truck on Oak Street, and there's usually always a a homeless person out there and I always ask the guy, the cook, I'm like, has anybody fed that person today? And he'll say yes or no. And so I was always asking, it's like, how can you take care of that how can that person take care of themselves if they're living on the street? I almost think that we'd be better to put them back in a community where they can maybe live, get taken care of, get the health needs, get their medications, and then maybe some of those people could transition into part-time jobs. And I don't know, it's just so sad to see so many people living on the street.
Right. And that is actually a really great idea. And I'm so glad that you brought that up too. I think first and foremost, we need to do a full thorough assessment of our homeless men and women. Let's figure out, like, why are you here? Mm-hmm. Is it a financial issues? Is it a mental health issues? Is it like, what's going on? Mm-hmm. And are you here from Stockton, or were you shipped in to Stockton? From another places.
I was just on my last interview, a guy, he was from Minnesota. Like, they shipped him. They're like, go to California because they can help you. Right. He did not know anyone out here, and I ended up buying him. He was a tenant of mine. Mm-hmm. He was a veteran, and I ended up buying him a ticket. I'm like, you got to go home. Like, you're gonna die here. Yeah. Like, and nobody's gonna know who you are.
Right. Right.
And he's like, they don't want me back. I'm like, you haven't even called them. Mm-hmm. You're assuming they don't want you back. He made a phone call, and they're like, where have you been? Right. In his mind, he had this whole story worked up where they didn't want him, but they didn't know where he was.
Right, right, exactly. So we need to figure that out. Are you from here? Are you from somewhere else? Mm-hmm. And if they're not from here,
figure out what we can
unification.
do.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then, there's ways, and I believe that there's ways. But of course, funding. Yeah. Where are we going to get the funding?
What do you think about a centralized location and like a tent city for them? That way you could have outreach, sanitation, and all the medical go out to one location versus across all these little, levee roads. And what do you think about a centralized location? So
I was from a refugee camp. I think you kind of know that a little already.
No, I didn't.
Oh, really? No, yeah. So I was actually from a refugee camp, and that's exactly how we were set up temporary. Mm-hmm. We live in camps, but yes, we have a place for medical. We have education center. It's possible. So, but we just need to have this conversation. And how are we going to get there? Tent city is not a bad idea. And there are options. There's small homes options. There are trailer options. There are many options. We just need to look outside the box.
I agree.
And think outside the box.
I know you've seen it, that big dome at the port, those two domes, those are cold storage. But that same company could build a little room the size of this for a couple $1,000. Mm-hmm. And it's structurally sound, it's waterproof, it's insulated, and you could build hundreds of those in an area, and then have the sanitation and the outreach and the education, all those things all in one. Right. And then we could start assessing the people.
Absolutely. They need. Yes. Because, the issues of homelessness is more than just the issue of human dignity. It is the health, the mental health, the public health, the crimes, and more than anything, to me, I feel that, both you and I, as a human being, we want to feel that we are a part of something. Right. We want to have a purpose in life. And some are luckier than others, And so when I look at the men and women who are homeless, I have many conversations with them. They have hopes and dreams too.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because, again, I was in and out, and this guy, you could tell he was homeless or less fortunate. Mm-hmm. And he looked at me and I said, I'll get you something to eat. Mm-hmm. And he's like, his eyes lit up. Mm-hmm. And so I walked out there and handed him it, and his buddy was there. Mm-hmm. And the first thing he did was hand him the fries and rip the hamburger apart. Mm-hmm. to share it with his buddy.
Yeah.
Had I known, I would have bought him something too.
Right.
But speaking of the community and hopes and dreams, like that's their community. They look out for each other.
Absolutely.
And so it's crazy that sometimes they'll go hungry just to feed their animals.
Yes.
They'll feed their animals before they'll take care of themselves.
Yes.
It's wild. A friend of mine, Dion, he gives little bags of dog food because he's always, he does construction, so he's all over the town. And so it's their community. That's their unconditional love is their pet.
Absolutely. And I'm so glad you mentioned the word community, because how we define community is very different from person to person, community to community. And, our homeless community, it is a community. So let's address it from a community aspect. What is it that makes a community?
Very true.
Right?
Let's have that conversation. Let's argue about it.
So, and Stockton, again, when my family immigrated to the United States, Stockton was our home. Cambodia. Okay. Yes. And that's another story.
Yeah, we'll have to have you on there.
Right.
When I was going to high school, that was when the Russia Cambodians were coming in. So
absolutely.
It was a learning experience for everybody.
Yes. Yes. And for the communities too, the Southeast Asian communities. But, and I love Stockton. We have great potentials. And especially now, I'm seeing so many people and the passion that people have, for the city. And if I can have a magic wand, I would just go, boom, everyone, let's all come together, let's just use all this creativity and the intelligence and that passion and build our city.
Mm-hmm. So what role does PTSD, it seems that yesterday was Memorial Day,
yes.
PTSD have a role in mental health? What are you seeing in that aspect?
Well, PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, is huge, especially among, for example, my family, where we escaped the genocide. So PTSD among Cambodian communities is the prevalence rate is super high. It's like over 85%.
Wow.
Yes, and less than 5% are accessing mental health services.
And what age group would you say that would be?
First generation, the direct PTSD, but also the indirect PTSD that we don't talk about. These are the second generation
children
who lives with parents with trauma. And if we just, talk about trauma in itself, our first responders are police officers, first responders, our servicemen and women. We don't know what goes on, when they're out in the field. And sometimes a lot of things that they've experienced, they
internalize.
Internalize.
And then it boils up.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And, the other part too, especially with servicemen and women, there's a term that we use is more than just post-traumatic stress disorder, but is the moral trauma. Sometimes...
Dive into that a little deeper.
So moral trauma is, say, for example, if you're out in Afghanistan, you might have to follow an order. That order might be against your moral values,
right?
But you have to follow the order.
Or it's their life against my life.
Absolutely. So you might have to kill another human being, right, for your own life.
Right.
And that's something that our servicemen and women take home, and they don't really, it's hard for them to talk about it. It's hard for them to live with it, right?
There's I don't know, it's just thumbing through the Facebook feed, and you thumb through the videos, because once you hit a video, and you could just scroll videos forever. And there was this veteran. He's like, I should have wrote this letter a long time ago. You gave your life so other people could live. And it was just it was about a minute and a half long letter or story about him writing a letter to his best friend who didn't make it.
Right.
And so I was just like, man, that was so touching. Especially, it's one of those moments.
It is. And PTSD, sometimes there are triggers. So, I'll share a little bit about my family. or for me, so like indirect PTSD. So I was grateful I didn't, go through the genocide, but I was post-genocide. I lived in the refugee camp. So I heard bombs. We used to hide in a barrack during the rainy season. And so, like for me, I can't watch movies that's related to the Vietnam War.
Oh, wow.
There's something about it, just the sound of bombs, or 4th of July. For many years, I did not like the sound of the fireworks because it stirs something up in me,
I can't imagine.
Yes.
I mean, actually, I can't imagine.
Yeah. Certain smell, it reminds me of
the camp. And
yes.
the smells are so strong.
Absolutely.
They're the strongest trigger. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. It is, yeah.
Walking into a house and you just smell a smell and it reminds you of, your grandma's cooking or it's like, it just triggers that.
Right.
So I couldn't even imagine something so traumatic being triggered just by the smell.
Right. Exactly. And so, and luckily, I'm aware of it. And that's why I do a lot of meditation and yoga,
Oh, you do?
Yes, I do.
Wow.
I teach yoga and at San Joaquin Delta College and
Oh, wow.
and health, yes. But but without the support, without the conversation, usually when I have certain memories, I would pick up the phone and call my mom or, talk to my husband about it. But if I didn't have someone to talk to, and if it just plays in my head, I wouldn't be able to sleep, and there goes
our
my
mind is a
functions.
tricky
Absolutely.
playground.
Yes, it is.
Yes. Speaking of mental health, Chester Bennington from Lincoln Park, I saw an interview with him, and he was just talking about how he gets in his own head and he starts this downward spiral, like telling himself a story that isn't even true.
Right.
It's just his perception of what's going on. He was like, that's why I'm always busy. And then, he ended up taking his own life. It was tragic, but I was speaking to my kids. I'm like, watch him sing to the group. All these people love him, but he's still alone. He's still alone in that moment. But you would never know.
Right.
And I talked to him about, you got to talk to, your parents if you have problems. 'Cause I can't fix it if I don't know.
Right. And, what you just said a minute ago, you can have people loving you. But the perception, individual perception is so critical. In this day and age, we have social media and all that stuff where, yes, part of it, in theory, is supposed to connect us with the world, right? But a lot of times people are on their phone like this and they isolate themselves from the reality.
Yeah.
And without connection, that human connection, that one-on-one connection, like true
Too many
meaningful
filters.
connection. Yes, it's like you lose
Touch
track
with
of
reality.
life and touch
Reality.
with reality. Exactly. Yeah. So that finding meaning in life and finding meaningful connections, in my opinion, especially when talking about mental health, this is just what I think is probably one of the most important thing that we can do to help someone suffering from mental health challenge.
So what role do you think diet and exercise? I mean, you said you do yoga and meditate. So for the people who aren't like homeless and have family members, and so they're still in that family nucleus, how can diet and exercise help them stay healthier longer?
And that's another great question. I am a huge health advocate. So in terms of diet, everything that we put into our body impacts our cells.
You are what you eat, like your mom said.
You are what you eat, absolutely. And so, if you just put in all these chemicals into your body, not that I'm anti-chips, because I love chips too.
I saw it on your Facebook page when I was stalking.
I'm like, oh, junk food.
There's a whole bag, a whole picture of chips. She's like,
Like, what am I doing to myself? But we have to be mindful of what we put into our body. You know, are we really putting nutrients dense food into our body? And what I mean by nutrients dense is, don't eat just to make you full, but eat for your body to actually grow and sustain the body in a healthy way, right?
In the bodybuilding world, like there's all these, protein supplements and this and that. And, now there's this whole new revolution of, whole foods.
Yes.
Eat steak and chicken and beef and ground beef and fish. Eat real food. That's the new way of thinking.
Right.
Instead of trying to have those quickly assimilated protein shakes and carbohydrates.
Absolutely, yes. And then in terms of exercise, when we work out, our whole body start working out, our hearts start pumping. And there's this thing that I always tell my students, it's the sympathetic versus the parasympathetic response in the brain, right? In our central nervous system. The brain doesn't fully know whether you're stressing out or you're anxious or you're excited or you're happy. You have to learn how to tell your brain that you're excited versus you're anxious, right? So the sympathetic response is, and it's the fight or flight response, which is very natural to all human beings and all, living creatures. When we're stressed out, our sympathetic response, our heart will beat, our eyes are focused, yes, and, blood are pumping through our veins, right? But if the body is if our body stays in that condition without learning how to switch into the parasympathetic response, which is the relaxation state, the body works all the time. And we know that when the heart starts pumping and pumping and pumping, it doesn't rest, that can lead to cardiovascular disease.
Oh, wow.
Stress is a direct correlation to cardiovascular disease.
So start yoga and relax.
That's right. Relax. You got to relax, and learning how to, tell the brain the perception piece, right? Yeah. Start training the brain to learn how to relax and learn how to stay positive and be positive.
In our world, it's like always seems like we're just go.
Yes.
This person, look where this person is. Social media is a double-edged sword. It keeps you connected, but it also creates that the envious, feeling of, oh, look at that person. That person probably isn't even really there.
Right. Exactly.
It's not even their car,
No, exactly. And this is where, with mental health, with everything, with health, we have to learn to think for ourselves and look at our own life and define or redefine our own life and living conditions, and not stop comparing,
I think you nailed it. Like,
others.
Redefine your own life. Like, figure out what is good for you.
Right. Absolutely. What is it that makes you happy? Don't let social media or commercials or anything on TV to tell you what makes you happy.
Well, she's 13 now, but I've been telling her for a long time. The girls you see on Instagram, your little things, TV and all, they're not real. So I found a video of this girl who's stunning, but without makeup, you couldn't even hardly tell who she was.
Right.
So I showed her like her putting on her whole face. And I'm like, see, she's just a normal girl.
Right.
It's all fake and illusion. It's not her natural beauty. Yes. She's not a naturally beautiful person. She has to do all this to make herself look that way. And then, she was still beautiful, but she wasn't like that, oh.
Right.
And then I did the what is it? Photoshop video, showed her, my daughter, like, okay, this is this person. And a guy took and they're all over YouTube, people who were just average looking people, and then they look like supermodels when they're done.
Right.
Especially with my daughter, I'm trying to create that, like, this is, just be happy with who you are.
Yes.
Because I worry about that.
Absolutely. And everything starts with the self, internally. And I think we have to learn how to be happy with ourselves first in our own skin. And it's hard to do it, I mean, I'm still trying and learning, but much better than when I was in my teens and in my 20s, but I think finding that happy spot, and it starts from within. It starts from us within and radiates without, and it starts with our family, spending time with our kids. I think time is so crucial.
Yes, I agree.
And if, I believe that no material things can be as great and as meaningful and as valuable as time.
I agree. Like I'll take my daughter or my son to swim or practice, and those 10, 15 minutes, I start teaching them. So for me, I take those moments with my kids, and even if it's a 10-minute drive, I always try to ask them, how are you doing? What are you doing? My daughter, I'm so fortunate. She's pretty open with me. She's like, Dad, can I talk to you? I'm like, yeah. Like, let's solve some problems together.
Right.
And so just teaching them little life lessons, like especially I'll share with them my day. So they understand my stressors and how I'm dealing with it. So for me, those are important times. But speaking of that time, what are some ways that parents could see their child or their loved one, what can they look out for when they have that time together with them?
So, I would say for parents, looking for behavioral trend. I always say, if you spend enough time with your kids, you know how they are. And as soon as they start to change from their normal behavior, it's time to start a conversation. And I would say, know their friends, know where they're going.
What would before we go there, what would that conversation look like? Like how would somebody have that conversation with their kid?
I believe in honest, open communication. And you can have honest, open communication if you spend enough time with your kids, right?
Yeah.
So, like for example, with my daughter, sophomore year wasn't easy. High school years was tough. And so I know that, she used to love to sing and like to put, makeup on and likes her YouTube music videos. And then all of a sudden she hides in her room, right? So I would...
Mom's like, ding, ding.
Yep, ding, ding, ding. Something is not right. Hold on. And so I went up to her and say, hey, honey, you know what? I don't see you listening to music anymore. What's going on? Well, let's chat. Let's have a conversation. I'm here for you. You know that. And my kids can talk to me because they don't... I'm so open. Whatever it is that they bring to the table, I don't really offer suggestions. I help guide them into finding solutions. Because I believe that, especially at that tender age, the teenager's age, it's an age where teenagers feel like they
know everything.
They know everything, right? So we want to empower them because, some of their ideas are great ideas. And, if they start going the other way, then I would say, okay, this is what mommy would do.
Yeah.
But that's mommy. But what is it that you would do?
I get you. Because
Yes.
that's what I did with my son. He was dating this girl, and like, you could do this or you could do this. I would do this, but you're free to make your choice.
Right.
So trying to empower him, trying to give him the ability to make that decision because so many people cannot make a decision.
Yes.
Drives me crazy.
Yes.
Like it's either yes or no.
Right.
Like do something.
Do something.
Even if it's wrong, just do it.
Exactly. And learn, and I share it with my daughter or my kids. I said, life is about living, and through the art of living, you will make mistakes.
Oh, man.
You're going to make a lot of mistakes.
You're going to fall on your face.
You're going to fall on your face. And what's important is when you fall, don't stay on the ground.
Yeah, it's going to hurt.
Get back up.
Pick yourself up.
That's right. And keep moving.
My dad said, he's like, it's not how you fall down, it's how you get up.
Exactly. Absolutely. So. Yes.
So where can people go if they feel that their children or their loved one needs some help? Where do they start?
And another excellent question, because sometimes parents might not know, but we have San Joaquin Behavioral Health Services.
Okay.
We also have Kaiser. Kaiser has a department. Talk to their healthcare provider. I think healthcare providers play a huge role in building that connection with the parents. Or if not, they can always contact our office, because we are connected with different agencies.
Okay.
So we can always support them in figuring out what to do and where to go. And maybe I can give you my phone number to the office later.
Yeah. Well, I'll definitely put it up on the link below.
Perfect. Yes.
So thank you for stopping by.
You.
I appreciate you sharing some of your personal story with us. And so we will have this. We'll have to talk again about your personal life. That's very interesting.
Thank you.
I mean, I would like to hear what it was like being in an internment camp. I'm sure not too many people know anyone who's ever lived through that. So it'll be an interesting story for sure.
My pleasure. And thank you so much for having this conversation and allowing me to be here with you. And I just want to share with the audience, mental health is not your fault. If you have children who suffer from mental illness, it's not your fault. Or if you suffer from mental illness, it's not your fault, and you're not alone.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lance.
Have a good day, everybody. Be kind to everyone, because you never know when somebody's going to change your life, but more importantly, you never know when you're going to change theirs. Have a great day.